Renault advise that oil changes are done every 12,000 miles or every 12 months. Personally, we tend to do oil changes at 9,000 miles as we believe that frequent oil changes is one of the cheapest ways to extend the engine life. Step 1. Warm up that engine. So it's rather a drizzly September morning here in Llandrindod, Wales. So I'm going to just head off to Crossgates, which is just outside of Llandrindod. We'll go along this national speed limit area. Looks like we're following a Thomas Motors recovery truck there. Down these sharp bends. Past the church on the left and into Crossgates. So we'll whip round the roundabout and back to Llandrindod. Under the railway bridge. Cows in the field there seem quite happy. Down this twisty bit again. And here we are, approaching Llandrindod Wells yet again. Over the little roundabout, into town, and then back home. Now that the engine is hot and the oil nicely thinned and runny, we can take the car into the garage for the oil change. Although we need the oil hot so that it's thin and runny, it will be dangerously hot. So don't rush too quickly to get the oil out, as it will be over 80 degrees, which could burn bare skin. Other than a trolley jack and axle stands, you will need the following for the Renault Laguna too. 10mm socket for the splash guard, 8mm square drive for the sump, an oil catch pan that can hold 10 litres or more, a torque wrench to torque 44 Nm and 25 Nm, a 27mm socket or spanner, 6.6 litres of 5W30 quality synthetic oil, and an oil filter and rubber sealing washer. So since the Renault uses 6.6 litres of oil, I will need two 5-litre containers of fully synthetic, and I'm using 5W30. The oil filter is like a cartridge type, and I'll be using a Wix WL7424. This will also come with a rubber sealing washer, as such, or sealing ring, and we must replace that. Then you'll need a 10mm socket to remove the lower splash guard or undertray on the car. The sump plug is undone with an 8mm square drive. And the oil filter housing is undone with a 27mm socket or spanner. I also use a little pick just to remove the sealing ring, because the pick gets in there quite nicely, just to lever that off. And also you'll need a torque wrench to re-torque the sump plug and the oil filter housing. And not forgetting some gloves, because dirty oil is not good for your skin. I also need a funnel, because it's quite a narrow filling on the Renault, and the all-important catch tray that must be able to take at least 10 litres. Now to jacking the Renault Laguna up and make safe with the all-important axle stands. When jacking the car up, make sure you actually put the head of the jack onto the strengthened area as marked here. Otherwise you could do damage to the seal. So because I'm using two jacks, I've got to jack each side up. I'm going to have to jack one side up a little bit, pop over to the other side, jack that up, and keep doing that till I've actually got the car to the height that I need. That seems to be the safest way to do it without any front jacking point. And always make safe the car by using axle stands. The axle stands are really quite imperative, because if a hydraulic jack was to fail while you're underneath, obviously you'll get crushed. So with the axle stands in place, I then lower the jack down onto them, but I also leave the jack in position still. This gives me 4 items effectively safeguarding me while I'm underneath. Now remove the plastic undertray. This is held in place by 8 bolts and requires a 10mm socket to undo them. Here's a photo to show the 8 bolts. Okay, so using our 10mm socket, we need to undo these 8 bolts. In my case there's only 6. The 2 at the front are missing. So I've speeded this up. Don't think it's that interesting. So the splash guard does hook underneath at the front and then drops at the back. That's why I'm using my foot to hold that up. So that's the last bolt for me. But as I'll show you, there is actually another 2 bolts there. Would be normally. Okay, so that's the panel down now. Remove the dipstick. Removing the dipstick helps avoid a vacuum forming when we drain the oil through the sump plug. This means the oil should flow easier. So here's the location of the oil filter and the drain plug. Now drain the oil using the 8mm square drive. So we're now ready to drain the oil. So we've got our catch pan, got some disposable gloves on, and we've got the 8mm square drive for the sump plug. So I use a breaker bar just to crack it open, and then I use my hand, but I push up on the thread as I undo it. So when I feel the thread end, I know that I can just pull it away in one go and the oil comes out nice and clean. So leave that to drain for a good while. Let's go and have a cup of tea. There we go. How satisfying. All that dirty oil gone. Torque tighten the sump plug back to 44 Newton meters, and ideally we would change the copper washer for a new one. So we can now set our torque wrench to 44 Newton meters, and using our 8mm square drive we can torque that up till we get the click, or 2 clicks, just to make sure. We can now move on to the oil filter, which is of the cartridge type contained within a plastic housing. For this you would need the 27mm socket or spanner to undo. If you look at this photo of the oil filter, you'll actually see there is actually an opening to drain the oil, so you don't need to unscrew it fully. So we can now use the 27mm socket and undo the plastic housing that the oil filter cartridge element is held in. Now if you undo it part way, the oil can actually drain out through that opening that I showed in the photo, and then just give it a little bit of time till it stops dripping. And then you can fully undo it and then tip the remaining oil out that's still inside the plastic housing, like so. Remove the old rubber seal and dirty filter cartridge and replace them with the new O-ring and new cartridge. Ensure the O-ring is seated in the correct place as shown in the next photo. To avoid oil flooding out, it's imperative that O-ring is in the correct position. So now we have the old filter, which simply just pulls out of the housing like so. And then we need to remove the O-ring. I'm going to give it a quick wipe over first, and then using my hook I just hook the O-ring and then I can just peel it off like so. So then we can take our new clean cartridge and the new O-ring. I like to put a little bit of oil on the O-ring. Just just to make sure that it slides in nicely when we put it back into the housing. And then this part just pushes in either end, like so, and there we go. And reinstall the new filter and torque to 25 Newton meters. I'm going to just put a little bit of extra oil on the O-ring again. And then it easily turns and goes in. And then I'll set my torque wrench to 25 Newton meters. Until we get our click. Now replace the undertray. And now to replace the undertray. Note that the undertray slides in at the front. Again, I tend to use my foot to hold the rear of the undertray. So there should be 8 bolts here using 10mm socket. Obviously in my case there's only 6 bolts because the front 2 are missing. They screw into like riv nuts. Sometimes the riv nuts fail and start spinning round and you have to drill them out and reinsert a new riv nut. Okay, so that's my last bolt. And I'll just point out the other 2 that should be there, which is that one there and that one there. So we can now lower the car to the ground and put the oil back in. On the side of my engine is the suffix number, which is 740, and in this case I need 6.6 litres of oil, which includes the oil filter change as well. For cars with the suffix 760, the quantity would be 7.4 litres. The 2.2 litre G9T uses 6.3 litres. Here's a photo showing the suffix number and its location. You might need to remove the silver engine cover to see the suffix number, but here it is on my car. If ever you're unsure how much oil to actually put in, you can always check the dipstick first, make sure it's on the maximum, and then measure the oil that came out. So in this case we had 4, 5, 6, probably about 6.2 litres came out. So again, if I actually pre-measure the amount of oil the engine needs, because I know exactly what it does need, that will stop me endlessly using the dipstick to keep topping the oil up. So I know I've got 5 litres there, and I need another 1.6 litres to give me the 6.6 litres. So I can now pop that in. So it's always worth using a funnel with the Renaults because the filler necks do seem to be somewhat narrow. So otherwise you do tend to get it going glug 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 back up at you. So that's my 5 litres in. So all I've got to do is add the extra 1.6 litres, which gives me my 6.6. And in theory I shouldn't need to actually check the dipstick because it should be exactly the right amount. So remove the funnel and then put the dipstick back in. We then need to start the engine so the oil filter fills up with oil and also that the red oil pressure light goes out on the dashboard. We then need to leave the engine for 10 minutes for the oil to settle back down. So the oil should have settled back down now into the sump, so we can withdraw the dipstick, wipe it clean, give it a good wipe, and then pop it back into the engine, then withdraw it, and that should give us an accurate reading which should be at the maximum. So if we look at the dipstick in closer detail, you can see it's just below maximum. I'll point to where maximum is. There's maximum. So do need to top it up a little bit. And lastly, don't forget to write the mileage down for your service records. For this car it's 134,293 miles. To reset the service reminder, you use the right stalk end button to toggle through to the service mileage display, and then hold the button in till the display starts flashing. Keep it pressed till the display stops flashing. Not really a necessity, but it won't do any harm to cut open the filter so you can open all the pleats and check for any metal particles that the filter may have caught. This can sometimes indicate if something is deteriorating within the engine itself. So here I used a pair of tin snips just to cut around the paper at the ends, like so. Then you can pull the plastic piece off and then do the same on the other end. And once that's cut through all the way around, you can then pull that end off as well. And there's like a plastic tube in the middle, perforated tube. Remove that, and then you can just check the pleats, make sure there's no bronzy coloured metal particles or anything. Here are some detailed photographs with labels to help with identifying all the visible parts. I will put them on for only 4 seconds each, with the idea that you can pause them for detailed viewing. Thank you for watching, and hope this helped other home mechanics out.